My brother looked me in the eyes and said you can't keep money because I owned a paid-off apartment, drove a decent car, and traveled every year. So I told him you're right. I never should have lent you $3,000. I 29M need some perspective on whether I'm going crazy or if my brother David 31M is actually as manipulative as I'm starting to believe. This situation has been escalating for months, and I'm at my wit's end trying to understand his logic. I work as a software engineer and have been fortunate enough to save a decent amount over the past few years. I live in a nice 2-bedroom apartment downtown that I've been renting for 3 years. It's nothing extravagant, but it's comfortable and in a good location near my office. David works in retail management and has always struggled financially, partly due to some genuinely bad luck and partly due to what I now recognize as poor financial decisions. The pattern started about 8 months ago when David asked to borrow $500 for car repairs. I didn't hesitate. He's my brother and I had the money. He promised to pay me back within a month. When the month passed, he asked for another $300 for unexpected bills. Again, I helped out. This continued with various amounts, $200 here, $400 there, always with promises of repayment soon. Here's where it gets bizarre. About 3 months ago, David started making comments about my spending habits. It began subtly. When he came over and saw I'd bought a new gaming console, he shook his head and said, "Must be nice to throw money around like that." I reminded him that I'd worked overtime to afford it, but he just scoffed. The comments escalated. When I mentioned planning a weekend trip, he launched into a lecture about financial responsibility. You know, Michael, the fact that you can just lend money out proves you're not managing it properly. If you were smart with your finances, every dollar would be invested or saved, not sitting around available for loans. I was speechless. This was coming from someone who owed me nearly $3,000 at that point. When I gently pointed this out, he got defensive. That's exactly what I mean. If you were financially responsible, you wouldn't have had that money available to lend. You're enabling both of us with your poor planning. The mental gymnastics were incredible. According to David, my ability to help improved. I was bad with money. He started critiquing everything. My apartment. Why do you need 2 bedrooms when you live alone? My car, a used Honda, would work just as well as your Mazda. Even my grocery choices name brand cereal. Really? Last week, things reached a new level. David came over ostensibly to discuss a repayment plan. Instead, he sat me down for what he called an intervention. "Michael, I've been thinking a lot about our situation." He began using his management voice. "I realize now that by borrowing money from you, I've been enabling your irresponsible lifestyle." I almost laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. "Look at this place," he continued, gesturing around my apartment. 2 bedrooms, nice furniture, downtown location. You're living beyond your means. The fact that you have money to lend proves you're not budgeting correctly. A responsible person would have every penny allocated. I tried to interject, explaining that I budget carefully, saved 30% of my income, and the money I lent him came from my emergency fund, which I was now regretting dipping into. Emergency fund. He shook his head condescendingly. If you managed your money properly, you wouldn't need an emergency fund. You'd have proper insurance and credit for real emergencies. That money should be invested. The conversation devolved from there. He suggested I should move to a studio apartment in a cheaper area, sell my car, and use public transit, and stop living like you're rich when you're not. When I asked about the money he owed me, he said we'd discuss it after you get your finances in order. I'm genuinely confused and frustrated. Am I missing something here? How did I become the financially irresponsible one in this scenario? His logic seems completely backwards, but he's so confident in his assertions that I'm starting to question myself. My friends think he's manipulating me, but I can't understand the endgame. What does he gain from this bizarre reverse psychology? I need outside perspective. Am I being gaslit, or is there some financial principle I'm not understanding? How do I handle this situation with my brother? Update 1, 2 weeks later. I wanted to thank everyone who responded to my original post. Your comments helped me realize I wasn't losing my mind and that David's behavior was indeed manipulative gaslighting. I took your advice and started documenting everything, including creating a spreadsheet of all the loans with dates and amounts. The total is now $3,400. Unfortunately, things have escalated in a way I didn't anticipate. Last Sunday, we had our monthly family dinner at our parents' house. I decided to keep things civil and not bring up the money situation. David, however, had other plans. Halfway through dinner, he clinked his glass and announced he had something important to discuss. My stomach dropped as he launched into what can only be described as a presentation about financial responsibility in the family. I've been doing a lot of thinking about wealth distribution and financial health. He began looking directly at me. And I've come to realize that our family has an unhealthy dynamic that's preventing all of us from reaching our full potential. My mother, Patricia, looked confused. "What do you mean, honey?" David smiled sympathetically. "Well, Mom, let me ask you this. Have you ever wondered why Michael has so much money to throw around while I'm struggling to make ends meet?" I tried to interrupt, but he held up his hand. "Please let me finish. The issue isn't that Michael makes more money. That's fine. The issue is that he hoards it instead of investing it properly. Did you know he's been lending me money?" My parents looked at me surprised. We'd never discussed the loans because I didn't want to embarrass David or cause family drama. The fact that Michael can lend money so easily proves he's not managing it responsibly. David continued, "Think about it. Warren Buffett doesn't have thousands of dollars just sitting around to lend. Every penny is invested working for him. Michael's liquid cash is a sign of financial immaturity." My father, Richard, frowned. "But David, if he's lending you money, doesn't that mean—" "That's exactly my point," David interrupted. "I've realized that by accepting these loans, I've been enabling his poor financial habits. It's like buying alcohol for an alcoholic. I'm helping him avoid facing his money management issues." The room was silent. I could see my parents trying to process this logic. My younger sister, Jennifer, caught my eye and mouthed, "What the fuck, David wasn't done." Michael lives in a 2-bedroom apartment downtown alone. He drives a car that's only 5 years old. He takes vacations. Meanwhile, I'm living paycheck to paycheck in a modest 1-bedroom driving a 15-year-old car, never taking time off. Who's really being responsible here? My mother, always the peacemaker, tried to find middle ground. "Well, David, people have different priorities." "No, Mom. This is about more than priorities. This is about family." Michael's hoarding of wealth is creating an unhealthy dynamic. If he truly cared about the family's overall well-being, he'd downsize his lifestyle and invest that money properly. The fact that he can lend me $3,000 without blinking proves he has too much. I finally found my voice. "David, you borrowed that money. You came to me in need, and I helped you. How does that make me irresponsible?" He gave me a pitying look. "The very fact that you see it that way shows how deep your issues go. A financially responsible person would have had that money tied up in investments, unavailable for impulsive lending. You're essentially keeping cash under your mattress." "Michael, it's primitive," Jennifer spoke up. "This is insane. David, you're literally arguing that Michael is bad with money because he was able to help you when you needed it. Do you hear yourself?" David's face darkened. "I don't expect you to understand, Jen. You're still in college. But when you enter the real world, you'll see that true financial responsibility means every dollar has a purpose. Emergency funds are for people who don't plan properly. Lending money is for banks, not brothers." The dinner ended awkwardly with my parents clearly confused and uncomfortable. As we were leaving, my father pulled me aside. "Michael, is everything okay?" This whole conversation was strange. I gave him a brief rundown of the situation, including the loans and David's recent behavior. My father's face went through several emotions: surprise, confusion, and finally anger. "So he owes you $3,400 and is trying to convince us that you're the one with money problems," he summarized. "That's exactly what's happening," I confirmed. My father shook his head. "I've seen a lot in my years, but this is a new one. Be careful, son. I don't know what David's playing at, but this isn't normal." Since that dinner, David has been texting me articles about lifestyle inflation and the danger of liquid assets. He's also started a family group chat where he shares financial wisdom, most of which centers around the idea that having available money is a sign of poor planning. My sister texted me privately, "Is David having some kind of breakdown?" This is genuinely concerning. I'm starting to wonder the same thing. This has gone beyond simple manipulation into something almost delusional. He genuinely seems to believe his own rhetoric, and he's trying to recruit our family into his backwards worldview. I've stopped responding to his messages, but I'm worried about what his next move might be. Several of you warned me that this kind of behavior escalates, and you were right. I just never imagined he'd try to turn our family against me in such a bizarre way. I'm meeting with a lawyer this week to discuss my options for recovering the money. I've also started looking into tenant laws in case David tries to force his way into my apartment, which several of you warned might happen. We'll update again if anything significant happens. Update 2 1 month later. The situation with David has taken such a surreal turn that I almost didn't want to post this update, but I committed to keeping you all informed, and honestly, I need to document this insanity somewhere. After my last update, I followed through with the lawyer consultation. She drew up a formal demand letter for the $3,400 which I had delivered to David via certified mail. His response was not what I expected. 3 days after receiving the letter, David showed up at my apartment with a manila folder and what I can only describe as the energy of a door-to-door or salesman who believes he's about to change your life. "Michael," he said brightly when I reluctantly let him in, "I'm so glad you're taking this seriously. I've prepared something that I think will resolve everything." He sat down at my dining table and spread out several printed documents. I recognized some of them. They were the text messages where I'd agreed to lend him money. "I've been doing a lot of research," he began, "and I've discovered something fascinating. Did you know that in many cultures, charging interest on loans to family members is considered morally wrong?" I stared at him. "David, I never charged you interest?" "Exactly." He beamed like I just proven his point. "Which brings me to my proposal. You see, while you didn't charge monetary interest, you've been collecting something far more valuable, psychological interest. I felt like I'd entered an alternate reality. Psychological interest." He nodded enthusiastically. "Every time you lent me money, you gained power over me. You became the responsible brother, the successful one, the provider. That psychological superiority you've been enjoying that's worth far more than any financial interest." He pulled out a document. He'd apparently created himself titled Reconciliation of Debts, Financial versus Psychological. "I've calculated the value of the psychological benefit you've received from our arrangement," he continued. "The self-esteem boost, the family status, the moral high ground. I've assigned monetary values to each." The document was insane. He'd literally created line items like feeling of superiority at family dinners. $50 per dinner times 8 dinners equals $400. Self-esteem from being the successful brother. $100 per month times 8 months equals $800. Story to tell friends about helping family. $200 one-time value. Am I moral high ground in arguments? $75 per argument times 6 arguments equals $450. The list went on. His total psychological benefit came to $4,100. "As you can see," he said proudly, "you actually owe me $700, but I'm willing to call it even." I was speechless. Jennifer, who'd been texting with me about the situation, had warned me he might try something crazy, but this exceeded all expectations. "David," I finally managed, "this is not how loans work. You can't just invent a new form of currency and declare the debt paid." His expression turned serious. "Michael, I'm trying to help you see the bigger picture here. Your attachment to money is unhealthy. The fact that you're so focused on getting back exactly $3,400 shows how much power money has over you." "It's not about power," I said, trying to stay calm. "It's about the fact that you borrowed money and agreed to pay it back. That's the entire basis of a loan." He shook his head sadly. "This is exactly what I mean. You're so trapped in conventional thinking about money. I'm offering you something much more valuable, the chance to let go of this toxic attachment to wealth." The conversation spiraled from there. He suggested that my insistence on repayment was proof of my scarcity mindset and that truly wealthy people would never notice $3,400. When I pointed out that truly wealthy people didn't become wealthy by giving away money, he accused me of capitalist propaganda. But here's where it gets truly wild. As he was preparing to leave, having failed to convince me of his psychological interest theory, he turned back with one final gambit. "You know, Michael, I've been thinking about your apartment situation." My blood ran cold. Several commenters had warned this might be coming. "What about my apartment?" I asked carefully. "Well, you're clearly struggling with some deep-seated issues around money and possessions. Living in this excessive space isn't helping. I have a proposal that could solve everything." He paused dramatically. "I'll move in here. You can move to my 1-bedroom. It's much more appropriate for a single person. The money you save on rent can go toward the therapy you clearly need for your wealth addiction, and having me here will provide daily accountability for your spending." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. "David, are you seriously suggesting we swap apartments?" "It's not a swap," he corrected. "It's a therapeutic intervention. The rent difference between our places is about $800 a month. Over the 8 months I've been borrowing from you, that's $6,400 in savings you could have had if you lived responsibly. I'm actually doing you a favor." "Get out," I said quietly. "Michael, you're not thinking clearly. Get out." He left, but not before sliding a proposal under my door an hour later. It was a detailed plan for how exchanging apartments would benefit everyone, including calculations showing that I'd save enough money to offset his debt within 6 months. Since then, he's been calling our parents daily, expressing concern about my deteriorating mental state and my obsession with money. He's convinced our mother that I'm having some kind of crisis because I'm insisting on repayment. Yesterday, my mother called and gently suggested that maybe I should let the money go and focus on healing the family. When I explained David's apartment swap proposal, she was quiet for a long moment before saying, "That does seem unusual. Jennifer has been my only ally in this insanity." She sent me screenshots of David trying to recruit her to his cause, including messages where he suggested she should refuse any financial help from me because it would feed my addiction to financial superiority. I've now officially filed a small claims court case. My lawyer says David's psychological interest defense won't hold up in court, but warned me to be prepared for more bizarre behavior as the court date approaches. I'm also taking security seriously. I've installed a Ring doorbell, changed my locks, and notified my building management about the situation. The last thing I need is to come home and find David has somehow moved himself in. This whole situation has gone from frustrating to surreal to genuinely concerning. I don't know if David is having some kind of breakdown or if this is calculated manipulation taken to an extreme level. We'll update after the court date or if anything else significant happens. Update 3. 6 weeks later. I need to start this update with what happened at the small claims court hearing because it sets the stage for everything that followed. David showed up to court in a full suit carrying a briefcase and looking every inch the professional businessman. I almost didn't recognize him. He's never dressed that formally in his life. He'd even hired a legal advisor, not a lawyer, as he made clear, but someone he found on Craigslist who specializes in alternative dispute resolution. When it was his turn to present his case, David stood up and asked the judge if he could provide context for the financial relationship. The judge, looking already tired, agreed. David launched into a PowerPoint presentation. Yes, he brought a projector to small claims court. The presentation was titled, "The Hidden Economy of Familial Debt, a Case Study in Psychological Capitalism." I wish I was making this up. He explained his theory of psychological interest to the increasingly bewildered judge, complete with graphs showing the exchange rate between financial and emotional currency. He'd actually created an equation: emotional benefit, EB equals financial loan, L times power dynamic, PD times time T. The judge interrupted after slide 3. Mr. Thompson, do you have any evidence that you didn't borrow $3,400 from your brother?" "Your Honor, I'm not disputing the financial transaction. I'm demonstrating that the debt has been paid through alternative means." Alternative means, the judge's tone was dangerously flat. "Yes, the psychological and social benefits my brother received." "Mr. Thompson, this is a court of law. We deal in legal tender, not psychological currency. Do you have the $3,400 to repay your brother David's confident facade cracked slightly?" "Your Honor, if you'll just look at slide 7. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $3,400 plus court costs. You have 30 days to pay." Next case. David tried to object, but the bailiff was already ushering him out. As we left the courthouse, he turned to me with a strange smile. "You think you've won, but you've just proven my point. You're so addicted to money that you take your own brother to court. I feel sorry for you, Michael. That was 6 weeks ago. The 30-day payment deadline passed without a penny from David. What has happened instead defies all logic." 2 weeks after the court date, I received a formal-looking letter from something called the Institute for Financial Wellness and Familial Harmony. It took me a moment to realize David had created this institute himself. The letter informed me that I'd been selected for a comprehensive financial therapy program due to my severe wealth addiction and toxic monetary behaviors. The treatment plan included a mandatory weekly sessions with David as my financial wellness coach, a spending diary to be reviewed by David, gradual asset reduction therapy, selling my belongings, residential downsizing, moving to a smaller apartment. The letter concluded, "Your participation fee of $3,400 has been waived in recognition of your severe condition." I thought this was just another one of his bizarre tactics until my apartment building manager called me. David had apparently contacted them, identifying himself as my financial conservator and requesting paperwork to transfer the lease to his name as part of a court-ordered financial rehabilitation program. He'd forged documents making it look like the court had appointed him to manage my finances due to my demonstrated inability to maintain healthy financial boundaries. The building manager thankfully was suspicious and called me directly. But David wasn't done. He started showing up at my workplace. The first time he told the receptionist he was there for a family emergency. When I came down to meet him, he handed me a box of my own belongings, items he'd apparently taken from my apartment during previous visits without my knowledge. "I'm returning these to you," he said loudly, ensuring others could hear. "Part of your recovery is learning to let go of material possessions, but I realize forced separation might be too traumatic at this stage." My coworkers were staring. My manager Sarah approached and asked if everything was okay. David extended his hand to her. "I'm Michael's brother, David. I'm helping him through some financial difficulties. Has he seemed stressed lately? Any unusual spending behaviors?" I quickly intervened, but the damage was done. David managed to plant seeds of doubt about my mental state and financial stability. He showed up twice more before building security, banned him each time, making sure to mention my condition with an earshot of colleagues. The harassment extended to social media. David created a Facebook page called Supporting Michael's Financial Recovery, where he posts articles about wealth addiction and the dangers of hoarding money. He tags our mutual friends and family members in posts expressing concern for my well-being. Sample post. Day 43 of Michael's journey, still refusing help. If you love someone with a money addiction, remember, their anger is the addiction talking. Stay strong. Hashtag financial wellness. Hashtag family first. Hashtag wealth addiction. My aunt called me after being tagged, genuinely worried I was having financial problems. When I explained the situation, she was horrified. But the damage to my reputation was spreading. 3 weeks ago, things escalated to a genuinely scary level. I came home to find David in my apartment. He'd convinced a maintenance worker that he was there for a family intervention and needed access for my safety. He was sitting in my living room with another stranger, a woman he introduced as Dr. Rebecca Martinez, financial wellness specialist. I later learned she was someone he met at a meditation center who believes money is energetic poison. "Michael, this is an intervention," David announced. "Your friends and family are worried about you." "What friends and family?" "It's just you and some random person. Dr. Martinez is here to help. She's offered to guide you through a financial detox program. The first step is admitting you have a problem." I called the police. While waiting for them to arrive, David and Dr. Martinez tried to continue the intervention with her, explaining how my aura was corrupted by monetary energy, and David nodding along seriously. The police made them leave, but not before David announced loudly enough for my neighbors to hear, "We're not giving up on you, Michael. Rock bottom is just the beginning." Since then, I've had to file a restraining order pending. I warned my HR department about David's behavior. I set up security cameras in my apartment, I change all my locks again, and make my social media profiles private. Explain to numerous friends and family members that I'm not having a financial crisis. The court has issued a wage garnishment order for the $3,400, but David's retail job means it'll take months to collect the full amount. He's also filed an appeal claiming the judge failed to consider alternative payment methods recognized in other cultures and philosophical frameworks. My sister Jennifer has been documenting everything and recently told me David tried to borrow money from her using the same psychological interest theory. When she refused and mentioned my situation, he accused her of being infected by Michael's toxic relationship with money. My parents are finally seeing David's behavior for what it is. My father called me last week. "Son, I owe you an apology. I thought maybe there was some miscommunication, but David, something's not right. He asked your mother and me to refinance our house to liberate ourselves from equity prison. We're worried about him." But here's the strangest part. David seems to genuinely believe his own narrative. This isn't just manipulation anymore. He's created an entire alternate reality where I'm the one with problems, and he's the concerned brother trying to help. Last week, I received one final letter from his institute. It informed me that since I was resistant to treatment, they were elevating my case to specialized care. The letter was signed by David as Chief Financial Wellness Officer and 3 other made-up names. I'm exhausted. I'm angry. And honestly, I'm worried about David. This has gone beyond trying to avoid paying back money. He's built an entire delusional framework to justify his behavior. I'll update once more when this all resolves, but at this point, I'm not even sure what resolution looks like. Final update. 4 months later. This will be my final update on the David situation. I've debated whether to share this because the ending is both more dramatic and more anticlimactic than anyone probably expects. First, the legal resolution. After months of wage garnishment, I've recovered about $2,100 of the $3,400. The rest is unlikely to ever be collected because David lost his job. More on that in a moment. The restraining order was granted after David violated the initial temporary order by showing up at my gym with pamphlets about financial addiction recovery. But the real story is what led to David's complete meltdown, and ultimately to a resolution none of us saw coming. About 2 months ago, David's behavior at work apparently became increasingly erratic. He started lecturing coworkers about their toxic relationships with money and tried to implement what he called alternative compensation methods at the retail store he managed. According to Jennifer, who heard this from a mutual friend who worked there, David attempted to pay employees in life credits, essentially IUS, that could be redeemed for personal growth opportunities. When corporate found out, they immediately terminated him. Unemployed and increasingly isolated, his roommate moved out after David tried to pay renting mindfulness sessions. David doubled down on his institute idea. He rented a small conference room at a community center and announced a seminar, Breaking Free from Financial Prison, The Revolutionary Truth About Money. My father attended without telling anyone. He said about 12 people showed up, mostly confused elderly folks who thought it was a legitimate financial planning seminar. David spent 2 hours explaining his theories about psychological currency, the evils of traditional money, and how I was patient zero in an epidemic of wealth addiction. At one point, according to my father, David broke down crying, saying I had rejected his help and chosen money over family. The seminar ended when the community center staff shut it down after participants complained. 2 weeks later, I received a call from my mother at 3 a.m. David had been hospitalized after what appeared to be a severe panic attack. When I arrived at the hospital, despite everything, he's still my brother. I found him in a psychiatric hold. The psychiatrist, Dr. Williams, explained that David had been brought in by police after being found at a bank, trying to convince customers that money was a shared delusion and offering to liberate them from their accounts. He'd apparently been awake for several days straight, surviving on energy drinks and his own adrenaline. This is where things get complicated and, honestly, where my anger started to shift to concern. During his psychiatric evaluation, David was diagnosed with bipolar I disorder, currently in a manic episode. The psychiatrist explained that his grandiose thinking, the elaborate schemes, the absolute conviction in his irrational beliefs, all classic symptoms. Looking back, the signs were there. The periods of depression David had always attributed to financial stress. The times he'd suddenly have grand business ideas that never materialized. The way he could go from barely functioning to unstoppably energetic. We'd always just thought of him as moody and impractical. David spent 3 weeks in treatment. When he was stabilized on medication, the difference was stark. The first time I visited him after he'd been properly treated, he looked at me with clear eyes and said, "Michael, what did I do?" The next hour was one of the most difficult conversations I've ever had. David, now lucid and horrified, listened as I explained everything. The loans, the gaslighting, the court case, the harassment, the institute, the attempts to take my apartment. He didn't remember all of it clearly, especially the recent parts. "I remember thinking I'd figured out something important about money," he said slowly. "Like I'd cracked some code everyone else was too blind to see. It made perfect sense at the time. Perfect sense. But hearing it now, he couldn't finish." Dr. Williams explained that during manic episodes, people can develop elaborate delusions that feel completely rational to them. The fact that David's mania had focused on money and financial theories wasn't unusual. It often latches on to whatever stressors are present in someone's life. David asked if I could ever forgive him. I told him I needed time. That was 4 months ago. Here's where things stand now. David is maintaining his treatment. He attends therapy twice a week, takes his medication religiously, and joined a support group for people with bipolar disorder. He's living with our parents temporarily while he gets back on his feet. He's slowly repaying the money, not through wage garnishment, but voluntarily. He got a new job, ironically, at a bank, though, in a back office role, and sends me $200 every month. Not because of the court order, but because, as he put it, I need to make real amends, not the crazy stuff I was doing. We're rebuilding our relationship carefully. We have coffee once a month, always in public places, always with clear boundaries. He's never asked to come to my apartment, and I appreciate that. He's also written apology letters to everyone he involved in his schemes, our parents, Jennifer, my coworkers. He could track down. Even the judge from small claims court. The Institute for Financial Wellness and Familial Harmony website has been taken down. The Facebook page deleted, all the documents destroyed. David jokes that he could probably write a hell of a psychology paper on financial delusions now, but his therapist has advised him to avoid fixating on that period. Jennifer has been amazing through all of this. She's been researching bipolar disorder, attending family support meetings, and helping bridge the gap between David and me. She pointed out something that's helped me process this. He was sick. Michael. The disease took his existing personality traits, his competitiveness with you, his financial stress, his tendency to overthink, and twisted them into something monstrous. My parents have been going to therapy too, processing their guilt about missing the signs. My mother especially beats herself up about the times she dismissed David's behavior as just David being David. As for me, I'm in therapy too. Not for wealth addiction, but to process the trauma of being gaslit, harassed, and betrayed by someone I love. To work through the complicated feelings of anger at David and relief that there's a medical explanation to figure out how to have a relationship with my brother while protecting myself. The money, ironically, has become the least important part of this story. I'll probably never see the full $3,400, and I'm okay with that. What matters more is that David is getting help, that our family is healing, and that we all now know what warning signs to watch for. David sent me a text last week, saw a financial wellness seminar advertised at the library. Thought you should know I only threw up a little bit. Progress grinning face with sweat. It was the first time I'd laughed about any of this. I don't know what the future holds for David and me. We'll never have the easy relationship we once did. Too much has happened. But we're working towards something new, something built on truth and boundaries and the understanding that mental health is fragile and precious. To everyone who followed this story and offered support and advice, thank you. Your validation when I thought I was going crazy kept me sane. Your warnings about escalation helped me protect myself. Your compassion when the truth came out helped me find my own. And to anyone dealing with a family member whose behavior has become irrational or harmful, please consider that there might be more going on than manipulation or malice. It doesn't excuse the behavior, but understanding it can sometimes lead to healing. That's all from me. Take care of yourselves and each other.